Just a few days from Northwestern's homecoming game against Wisconsin, it's time to break down the opponent.
You are Locked On Northwestern, your daily podcast on the Northwestern Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in. This is Locked On Northwestern, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Carter Bird, and thank you for making Locked On Northwestern your first listen for anything and everything Northwestern. Every day, we are available wherever you get podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever we are available. We're also on YouTube. Just search Locked On Northwestern, and you can find us. Make sure you turn on notifications and subscribe. Make sure you leave a comment and a review, and so we can get the best feedback so we can make this show better as we go. Also, today I'd like to shout out our friends at BetOnline. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, so we know today that we're going to talk about this Wisconsin team that Northwestern plays. And obviously this Wisconsin team is going through a state of transition. If you have not heard, this week on Sunday, you saw their longtime coach Paul Chryst was fired, and Jim Leonhard was named the interim head coach. And it certainly was a shock to everybody around the country. Paul Chryst had been the head coach at Wisconsin since 2015. In his time there, his overall head coaching record is 86-45. In his tenure at Wisconsin, he was 67-26. In conference play, they were 43-18. 7-2 in bowl games, which is impressive. 4 10-win seasons, 4 finishes in the top 25, 3 finishes in the top 15, and a couple of top 10 finishes. His last few years, he was 9-4 and 6-3 in Big Ten play in 2021, and then obviously this year they started 2-3, and it was not the best start for this Wisconsin team this season. But, I mean, you also have to give him credit that he won the Big Ten West 3 times in his tenure at Wisconsin, 2016, 2017, and 2019. Unfortunately, I believe every time they ran into Ohio State and things did not exactly turn out their way. When you talk about Paul Chryst, I mean, he's somebody who had won so many games in his tenure at Wisconsin, had really helped continue to hold that program to a high standard. Wisconsin's been relevant for a very, very long time now, and it's definitely a shock to the coaching community. You saw Pat Fitzgerald in his press conference on Monday talk about it. I mean, he said about Paul Chryst, look, he's an outstanding coordinator and head coach. He said he'll find a way on somebody's staff. He's a good friend, just because they have that Big Ten West connection. They also have that Under Armour connection between their two schools. So they did kind of see each other at different events. Their families got to know each other. He said that he has the utmost respect for Paul Chryst, and he wishes him and his family the best moving forward. And, I mean, that's really all you can ask for. I mean, he said that he had Paul Chryst had built a heck of a legacy, was winning 70% of his games, won a ton of bowl games, as you saw there with that 7-2 record, competed for Big Ten championships. Again, unfortunately, not many people have won Big Ten championships in this era of just dominance by Ohio State. And look, I mean, Fitz, he tipped his cap to Paul Chryst and the career that he's had. He enjoyed getting to know him. Their wives became friends. He enjoyed Paul Chryst's perspective when they would talk. He said that, look, I mean, as great of a coach he is, being a coach does not define him. He is a great person as well. But in the interim, Jim Leonhard is taking over at Wisconsin. He played at Wisconsin, played 10 years in the NFL for 6 different teams, his last season being in 2014. He became Wisconsin's DB's coach in 2016 and then became the defensive coordinator in 2017 after Justin Wilcox left for Cal. And he's been the D coordinator until obviously now when he has been named the interim head coach. I guess he's going to continue to call the defense. Look, I mean, this is a 7-game audition for him. I mean, I know Wisconsin has not had the start that they want to this point in the season. And I think they know who their main 2 candidates are. And it's Jim Leonhard, and then it's also Lance Leipold at Kansas. But Lance Leipold's getting a lot of buzz at Nebraska. So I think that that helped spur action here. Jim Leonhard as a player was a 3-time first-team All-Big Ten, nominee, and then he was a 3-time All-American as well. He was a former walk-on that did not get awarded a scholarship until his senior season. He does kind of have some similarities to Pat Fitzgerald, being that like former player that means so much to the program, now taking over, was on staff, and is now getting a chance to head up the program. He's kind of had a crazy football journey, a crazy path. I mean, started as a walk-on, became an All-American, then was awarded a scholarship. Then, interestingly enough, 3-time All-American, was an undrafted free agent in the NFL, managed to scratch out a 10-year NFL career. Very impressive. I think at one point he actually led the Big Ten in his college career in punt return yards. And then so in 2014, his tenure or his career in the NFL comes to an end. And he spends that 2015 year just studying film with, at the time, the defensive coordinator, Dave Aranda, learning schemes at college, just continuing to, I guess, learn as much as he could. Well, 2016 rolls around, and Durante Jones, the DB's coach, left to go to the Dolphins, and Jim Leonhard had been asking Paul Chryst for a place on the staff, wanted to be involved, be a part of Paul Chryst's staff, and sure enough, without any prior true coaching experience, Jim Leonhard got that DB's coaching job, and then a year later became the defensive coordinator. And that's just fascinating to me, this meteoric rise. There's almost these like peaks and valleys in his career. Like, he does these great things, and then it's almost like he doesn't get the recognition for it. And then all of a sudden he just explodes onto the scene again. I mean, being a walk-on, becoming an All-American, getting that scholarship, undrafted free agent. You wouldn't have expected that. And then 10-year career, and then just kind of steps away from his NFL career and wasn't really a coach, and then just explodes back on the scene again as a DB's coach and then a defensive coordinator. Well, now he's the interim head coach at his alma mater, and I think that it's a very, very interesting time for him. I mean, this is a chance for him to earn his dream job. I mean, and Fitz acknowledged that in his presser on Monday. And then he also said, look, I mean, Jim Leonhard is going to do a phenomenal job. He's got a lot of ties with this Northwestern staff. He's built up a really, really strong defense at Wisconsin over the past while. And I think that kind of talking about this change, this transition that Wisconsin's going through, I mean, I think that there definitely seemed to be a level of shock, and Fitz acknowledged that. I mean, but to an extent, they have to focus. Northwestern has to focus on itself, but it will be interesting. And Fitz acknowledged that with a new interim coach, there's probably going to be some things, some aspects that change one way or the other. And I think he is telling his staff and his team to an extent to treat it like an opener, like be willing and ready to make adjustments when needed. And I think that is truly something to keep an eye on in Jim Leonhard's first game as the Wisconsin head coach. It'll be interesting to see how this Wisconsin team that's 2-3 responds coming out of a couple Big Ten losses to open their conference slate. How do they respond on Saturday on the road at Ryan Field? It'll be interesting to keep an eye on under Jim Leonhard. In a second here, we're going to start talking about the offense that Wisconsin has. But first, let's talk about our friends at Nissan. Our partners at Nissan have worked with us to create a new segment across the Locked On College Network titled Thrilling Moments, where we highlight the most exciting play from the Northwestern weekend game or throughout the history of our alma mater. This week's thrilling moment from the Wildcats is Bryce Gallagher's diving interception in the rain on Saturday at State College. As Fitz said in his presser, I mean, it was truly, truly an impressive catch, and the ability to get his hands under the ball and secure that interception in the rain is definitely, it was a big momentum shift for Northwestern. Fitz even joked that he was confused how the play stood on review and was not confirmed, because every bit of evidence showed Bryce Gallagher getting his hands under the ball and securing that ball wholly and completely. But this segment has been inspired by the thrilling new designs featured across Nissan's new lineup of vehicles. Pursue what thrills you in the all-new Frontier, Armada, or Pathfinder today. Available now at nissanusa.com. All right. So now that we've talked about this transition that Wisconsin is going through, let's just take a look at kind of the bigger numbers with this Wisconsin offense. So right off the bat, this offense is scoring 29.8 points per game, which ranks out at about 72nd in the country. With that, they're gaining about 388 yards a game. 169.8 of that is coming on the ground. 218.2 of that is coming in the air. They're about 4.6 yards a pop on the ground. And then yards per pass attempt, about 9 yards, a little over 9 yards at 9.02. Yards per completion, a little over 14.17 yards. Their completion percentage with Mertz at quarterback is about 63.6%. And they're running about 61 plays a game, a little over 61 plays a game on offense, 61.4. They are not a great third down or fourth down team, converting just 42.1% of their third downs, and then 28.6% of their fourth downs. They're 24 of 57 on third down, and then they are 2 of 7 on fourth down. In the red zone, they do score at a pretty high clip. They've got 17 opportunities in the red zone so far this season. They have 8 touchdowns, 6 of those coming on the ground, 2 of those coming on the pass. So they clearly, as we all know with Wisconsin, they would prefer to run the football, especially in the red zone. They have 2 field goals as well for 15 total scores. So just twice have they managed to get into the red zone and not come away with some sort of points. They've allowed 12 sacks on offense for a total of 71 yards lost, 2.4 sacks per game. Kind of a higher number than you probably like out of this Wisconsin team. It'll be interesting to see how Northwestern can generate pressure and make Graham Mertz uncomfortable back there. Time of possession, It's not a very exact stat that I could find, but they're at about right at 30 minutes. So they're basically possessing the ball for half the game, and they actually stack out at exactly 59th in the country in time of possession, somewhere really close to the middle because they are controlling the ball for half the game. On offense, they've got 19 touchdowns to 8 turnovers, so they have turned the ball over some. They've suffered some losses, and they do want to run the ball, but at times that they can kind of get stalled up with that behind their offensive line. Their offensive line that is surrendering a decent amount of sacks already at this point this season. But it'll be something interesting to keep an eye on. How does this Northwestern defense that's coming off probably its best performance, generating 5 turnovers, making Sean Clifford uncomfortable back there throwing the football? 50% pass completion, I believe, in the rain. How do they respond on Saturday back home for homecoming? It'll be something interesting to keep an eye on. Here in just a second, we're going to start talking about the defense for Wisconsin. But first, let's talk about our friends at BetOnline. BetOnline is your number one source for all your football betting info this season. Find all the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcast, and in-depth articles and analysis on every game you can find. And as always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all your sports wagering information with live betting and up-to-the-minute scores for every sport out there. The fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite games and events, including MLB, MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to BetOnline or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. Look, BetOnline, it's a great place to go find lines and everything. And I know as I do every Friday, I have my picks segments. Kind of killed it this past week. Well, I think I went 10-4 on the Big Ten picks, and then I think I went 9-5 on the picks around the country for a 19-9 overall record, picking against the spread and the over/under. It was pretty strong weekend for me making those picks. I can't say that it's been like that every weekend, but I was definitely pumped about that when I went back and looked at it. But BetOnline's a great place to go find lines, go find the materials you need that you want, and great place to kind of get in on the sports wagering side of things. All right, so now that we've talked about this Wisconsin offense, let's talk about this Wisconsin defense. This Wisconsin defense is allowing 22 points per game, good for 46 in the country, allowing 316 yards a game. 124.6 of that is coming out on the ground. 191.6 of that is in the air. They are allowing the other team to run the ball at about 3.7 yards per pop. They're allowing 7.2 yards per pass attempt and 12.28 yards per completion. They're only allowing a 58.6% completion percentage. We'll see how that plays out for Ryan Hilinski on Saturday. Hilinski, obviously, in the weather, did not have his best completion percentage game on Saturday against Penn State. Let's see if he can bounce back against this Wisconsin defense. They are having about 60.4 plays per game run against them. And then they are a pretty stingy third down defense, allowing just 31.1% conversion rate, 19 conversions on 61 third downs to this point in the season. Fourth down, they're a little more down the middle, 50%. They've allowed 3 first downs on 6 fourth down attempts against them. In the red zone, they allow 83.3% kind of points per opportunity. It's 18 total opportunities, 11 touchdowns, 7 of them rushing, 4 of them passing, 4 field goals for 15 total scores and 18 opportunities. They have gotten 9 sacks to this point in the season for 64 total sack yards. And that averages out to about 1.8 sacks per game. So they're allowing 0.6 more sacks a game on their offenses than their defense is getting. Just something interesting of note. Obviously, they still 59th in time of possession because they were on the field for about 30 minutes of the game. They've allowed 14 touchdowns this season while forcing 9 turnovers and turning one of those turnovers into a pick 6. So they do have 1 defensive touchdown. This unit, of the 2 units, obviously I expect the defense to be the most consistent to what they've performed to this point, because it is Jim Leonhard's unit, and he is the interim head coach. So he's still around. It'll be interesting to see how this Wisconsin defense, or how Northwestern attacks this Wisconsin defense. Last week you saw Illinois kind of run the ball on them a little bit. Can Northwestern get the run game going behind that strong offensive line, that consistent offensive line behind Peter Skoronski, kind of your anchor of that group? Can they get going in that aspect? Can they get Evan Hull and Cam Porter and that group kind of rolling early and set a tone in this game on Saturday? That'll be something very interesting to keep an eye on. But those are kind of the big picture numbers about this Wisconsin defense. We looked at the offense as well, and we looked at the fact that they're going through a heck of a transition period, and it's definitely going to be a challenge for this Wisconsin team to kind of block out the noise, go on the road to Evanston, and put forth their best performance, just with the fact that their head coach was fired 6 days before this game plays on Saturday. It'll definitely be interesting to see how this Wisconsin team reacts. But that's probably going to do it for today's show. Kind of as this week progresses, we're going to try to get a crossover with Locked On Badgers. I know that Ryan over there is kind of sick, and so I don't want to. I'll see if he's up for it. But hopefully we can get that worked out. If not, I'll kind of break down more individuals on this Wisconsin team tomorrow, and then do the typical Friday keys to Northwestern competing and winning the game, and then picks around the Big Ten and picks around the country. But I just want to thank you for making Locked On Northwestern your first listen every day for anything and everything Northwestern. We really appreciate it. We're available wherever you get podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever. We're also on YouTube. Just search Locked On Northwestern. Make sure wherever you're listening, you subscribe, turn on notifications, leave us a comment, leave us a review. We'd love to get your feedback. We'd love to improve the show, all of that good stuff. We want to make the best product for you. And hey, don't be afraid to tell a friend. We'd love to expand the audience and reach more of the Northwestern fan base. Really appreciate you being willing to do that and help spread the word. I mean, we're trying to kind of cover this Northwestern team in maybe a time period where there's not as much coverage as maybe some of the other teams around the Big Ten. And so trying to cover Northwestern athletics to the best of our abilities. But yeah, I mean, when you look around the Big Ten, when you have a team that you root for in the Big Ten, you need to know what your team is up against across the Big Ten with Locked On Big Ten. Every day, host Nate Dickinson and local experts of Locked On take you across the Big Ten in 30 minutes. Make Locked On Big Ten your second listen. Locked On Big Ten. I will see you all tomorrow with either a crossover episode maybe or maybe just an individual breakdown of this Wisconsin team. Some people to keep an eye on for Saturday. I will see you all next time.